Hi, I'm Lisa Henderson, Editorial Director for Applied Clinical Trials, and I'm here today with Jenny Gidley, Vice President, Clinical Operations for Parexel. And Jenny leads a team of over 600 employees in over 40 countries. She has an MBA in biopharmaceutical management and PMP certification. She has 20 years of industry experience in the areas of monitoring and clinical operations and project leadership at both sponsor companies and at Parexel. And Jenny is here today to discuss decentralized trials, what she is seeing in regard to those trials on a day-to-day basis, where the knowledge gaps are, and what this means for investigative sites. So Jenny, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Lisa. It's a real pleasure to be here.
I'm glad to be able to share your expertise with our audience. So the first question I thought, of course, with COVID-19, there was a lot of accelerated adoption of DCTs, decentralized clinical trials, over the last 18 months. So how has it changed core clinical operations staff, and how has the attitude toward DCTs changed?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think with COVID, we saw a swift change in perspectives, honestly, where we saw that DCTs were critical to managing patient safety, trial continuity, and data quality throughout the pandemic. And this was particularly so because many sites were closed to all but emergency cases to see patients. So there's become this willingness and even excitement to incorporate decentralized clinical trial aspects into a study. Things like online visits, where site personnel meet with patients via video or web functionality. They may have in-home healthcare visits, or even direct-to-patient drug shipments, or sending other necessary materials directly to a patient's home to prevent them from having to travel to the site. And also our sensors collecting data in real time. With new studies, we're incorporating DCT into about 80% of our phase 2 and 3 proposals, and it's going into all of our phase 4 proposals currently. And this is a really sharp increase from where we were even 18 months ago, all really driven largely by the needs from the pandemic. It would have really taken far longer to achieve these levels, I think, if we hadn't seen such a change in the world with COVID. What we're also seeing is that expertise is now better embedded across our organization, with all functions involved in components of DCT. And I think we've all learned that change can be even faster than we expect. People are incredibly adaptable, honestly, when the need arises. Our clinical leaders and our CRAs, they haven't just changed their approach based on their job roles, but they've also encountered components of decentralized patient care even in their daily lives. Many private practices and hospitals, they utilize telehealth services as well during the pandemic to limit face-to-face interaction. And I think when you yourself have participated in something, it makes you a much better advocate and improves the relatability significantly to both the benefits and the challenges. So overall, I would say we have a better understanding of where DCTs work best and where they don't. The reality is patients may not always be receptive to the areas where we think we're making it easier for them. So for example, they may not want to utilize home health nurses because they don't want strangers in their homes. So what we've done is evolve the model into a community care circle, where if a patient doesn't feel comfortable being treated in their home, they can go to a nearby pharmacy or lab at a more convenient location to them than perhaps the clinical investigator site was. And then finally, I would say, we can't forget about RBQM, or risk-based quality management. This is a key piece to the holistic management of the trial, where DCT is one part of that to a more broad risk-based approach. And we've also really seen remote monitoring become standard practice. What we've found is you can incorporate remote monitoring into all sites, regardless of the country or the site regulations. You just have to work within those, but a component of remote monitoring can be incorporated everywhere to make sure that we're maintaining those touch points with the sites throughout the trial.
Well, those are all a long list of great benefits of decentralized trials. And, we've discussed that in the on our website and in the magazine, but have you seen gaps or areas of focus that are needed in order to be addressed in order to increase acceptance of DCTs?
I really do think we've come a long way in the last 18 months by focusing on DCT implementation. However, there's certainly knowledge gaps that do still exist with different sponsors, with our sites, and with ParExcel team members as well, based on their level of exposure and past experience. I'd say there are several key areas of focus where we're looking to improve. One of which is really understanding the DCT options that are available for general study management versus those that may be more indication or therapeutic area specific. And that can vary widely depending on the study, the objectives, and the therapeutic area. I'd say a second main area would be really thinking through the regulatory authority and the IRB or REB considerations and their requirements. Some regulatory authorities and IRBs haven't had a lot of exposure to DCTs in the past. So when they see that for the first time, it often raises additional rounds of questions and response prior to approval of the study. So we need to be aware of that as well and considering that when we're doing our initial submissions. The third key area I would say is making sure to consider the real life application based upon the patient population. Some technology ends up being an added burden for the patient and in the end, not a helpful tool. So as an example, I've seen it in some studies where we went in and we're really excited about our DCT components, but it didn't actually work out that well for that particular patient population. For example, certain patients really want that face-to-face time with their doctors and nurses that are running the trial. And so in this case, offering home health nursing to perform some of those visits may not be seen as a benefit to the patient. We need to really make sure we're engaging with key sites as well as the patients in advance of protocol finalization to get their input. The role of patients and sites together and those relationships really, I don't think we should underestimate. And then the final thing that I would say is technology. This is a huge area of opportunity. It's also an area where we have a lot of new technology with little standardization so far. We need to make sure that we're working to make it easier on sites for all of the different platforms that they're being asked to manage. There could be half a dozen or even more different technology platforms that we ask a site to interact with over the course of the study. And that's creating additional burden, not just for the sponsor or the ParExcel study team, but also for the site staff. If you think about the fact that many investigator sites are participating in multiple studies at a time, you can very quickly add up to dozens of different platforms across their studies and across the different sponsors that they're working with. I do think a lot of information sharing is occurring that'll help reduce those gaps where, establishing information repositories, training sessions, not just at study startup, but particularly and ongoing throughout the study, and providing real hands-on support through our CRAs and with help desk technical support as well. I think we need to look holistically at the resourcing and the infrastructure needs that needs to change so that we have that right level of expertise in the right type of staff to do the various technical roles as we're moving forward.
So thank you for sharing those lessons that you've learned in the past 18 months. And clearly, we've come a long way in the industry. So how do you think we can use this knowledge to better build DCTs from the start?
Yeah, so Lisa, I think what I've learned is DCTs are not a one-size-fits-all approach. Flexibility is really key. We want to build that in up front to allow sites and patients to utilize services such as home health nursing, depending on their preference. And we also need to make it clear what portions of DCT are not optional, such as participating in the electronic patient reported outcome or ePro questionnaires, which can be key data for the study and we need to make sure we're collecting. The other big one for me is to seek input upfront from the sites or key opinion leaders to get that real life applicability based on the indication and the patient population. And also involve patients or patient focus groups so that the study design will meet their needs and really make their lives easier. We can also look at areas to provide better training for the home healthcare nurses that are conducting the study activities to make sure we're consistent in that approach, and that will help reduce patient and site frustration. So establishing clear communication lines and oversight plans between the home health nursing vendor, the sites, and the sponsor are really needed. Overall, I would say that DCT is a mindset. So we need to look at every trial and see how patients' lives could be made easier and work from there.
I like that, Jenny. DCTs are a mindset. I like that. So looking to the future, how do you see DCTs evolving over the next couple of years?
You know, I think we'll continue to see more fully decentralized models, and then the majority of studies incorporating some portion of hybrid DCT into the study. So DCT is going to become the norm in the industry versus the exception that it was 2 years ago. I also think we'll see more consistency moving forward. From the one hand, I would expect to see more guidance from our regulators on their expectations and requirements as they also become more experienced with DCTs. And that will naturally move the industry towards a more consistent approach. And the second big change that I foresee is the opportunity related to the number of technology vendors that are in the marketplace right now. I think that's going to continue to transform where we'll offer more improvements in the transparency of data, it becoming available in more real time, and even more user-friendly interfaces. And then I also think it's reasonable to think that there's going to be some consolidation of vendors in the field, which will result in several market leaders in the area for the future. I think there's just so much opportunity in the area of DCTs, and I really look forward to being a part of the future state.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your insights and your expertise. It's really helpful for the audience. We really appreciate it.
No, listen, it was a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for your time today, Lisa.
Thank you.